For some characters, this episode was everything I could have ever wanted. But for other characters, what are we doing? Welcome back, everyone. Today we're here to talk about X-Men 97, Season 2, Episode 7, Strange Land, Savage Heart. That's right, we're going to the Savage Lands in this one, which I knew this episode would be coming because I saw the trailers for the show. And before we get into discussing it, because there are some things that I absolutely loved about this episode, and there are some notes that I have, is what I would say, some constructive criticism for this episode. But before we get into that, I want to know from you, what do you prefer when it comes to your X-Men stories in the animated series or in the comics? Do you like something that's like one big epic story where we're focusing on one main storyline? Or do you prefer something that is more bite-sized character stories that are self-contained? Let me know down in the comments, because this episode really feels like it is primarily a character story to me. And that is not necessarily bad, but we have had a few character stories in a row. But let's talk about this one and kind of what we're doing. There is also some stuff that we're doing to advance the main world building. Some of the main plot is in here, so there's other things that we're doing. We are mainly focusing on Nightcrawler in this episode. And I have to say, shout outs to Adrian Hugh, who I actually met a couple years ago. I met him at a convention in Phoenix. He was so lovely, so nice, and he absolutely crushed this episode. Honestly, I don't know what more I could have wanted as a Nightcrawler fan. I think Nightcrawler fans are going to be eating good with this one. So if that's you, let me know your thoughts on their approach to Nightcrawler in this episode. We get to see Nightcrawler not just fight with swords, but we get to see him fight with words. And what is he doing? He's fighting to try and argue for Graydon Creed potentially being redeemable. That's right, Nightcrawler is so devout and believes so much in the goodness of people in the world that he believes even Graydon Creed could find some kind of salvation. And he is trying to argue for his half-brother in this episode, who he actually refers to as just his brother. And I love that Rogue's like, nah, half-brother, really? Really, he's our half-brother. I'd like a bit of distance from that guy. And we go to the Savage Land because that is where the Acolytes are, Magneto's Acolytes, which I did not think we were going to get to see in this episode. And that is where we're doing the trial of Graydon Creed, with Exodus and his Acolytes arguing for Graydon Creed needing to be condemned, him not being redeemable, and Nightcrawler trying to argue that maybe there's more to him than meets the eye. Maybe there is a way for him to find salvation. But while I feel like we did Nightcrawler really well in this episode, like insanely well, even in the end when he's confronting Graydon out in the Arctic tundra there, I thought that was all really well done. There is another character that we need to talk about in this episode that, as a fan, I was a little frustrated with. And that is Magik. Magik is here and she appears, and while I think a lot of Magik fans will be excited to see her, you're also going to be probably immediately disappointed by the fact that she's getting fridged in order to advance the plot of Colossus. For those who are not familiar with the term fridging, it is essentially referring to Kyle Rayner's girlfriend in Green Lanterns, who was killed and literally put in a fridge. And so that's why we call it fridging. So that's when a female character is sacrificed to advance a main character's plot. And that is definitely what happened with Magik here, especially because somehow we show her being able to teleport people to safety, and then the next instant she's just pulls out her soul sword, stands there, looks at the Sentinel, looks back at Colossus, looks back at the beam, and in theory, I think would have actually been vaporized the way that the animation shows it. And I thought to myself, maybe there's some way that Magik could survive. Maybe she's going to teleport, because the fact that she didn't teleport at all and she just did that is weird to me. And yet we get a body. So I don't know if Magik is still somehow out there, or if there's going to be another way that we bring her back later on. I'm sure she'll return, but I'm a little frustrated at how we handled her demise here. It felt like they wanted to revisit Genosha and give us another moment that was like what happened to Gambit, except what happened to Gambit makes a lot of sense. He was in a place where he was able to utilize his power set to defeat the Sentinel, to take it out, but he knew it would cost him his life. Now, in this instance, we just have Magik doing a very slow, dramatic look, and that's the only reason why she dies. It feels really weird and it just feels silly. I don't know. I really didn't like that. But there is still a lot to enjoy about this episode, including, I think, Colossus. So while Magik may have died to advance his plot, he is done really well, I think, here. And the cool thing about him, what I like, is that we get to see both the hard and the soft side of Colossus. We get to see how the loss of his sister kind of turned him into someone who believes there needs to be people that are punished for this. He joins up with Exodus, who of course in the comics we know is a villain, who reveals his true colors in this episode as well. And yet at the same time, we get a moment where when we're looking at this beautiful vigil of everyone that's been lost in Genosha, he has this painting of Illyana that he himself painted. So we're remembering that Colossus is also this soft, kind of gentle giant who does also paint. That is a canon thing in the comics, and I love that we kept it alive here. So that was cool, and I liked seeing both sides of him, the one that wants to condemn and the one that is willing to forgive. Not because he can forgive, but because it's something that Illyana would want him to do. And I also feel like that was a beautiful moment at the end of the episode with Nightcrawler, where we see him in his hardened mutant form. And I love also they even kept him shrinking about a foot, because if you didn't know, Colossus is actually about a foot or over a foot taller. He's over 7 feet when his powers are activated. But in his human form, he is shorter. He's still tall. He's still over 6 foot, I believe. I think he might be like 6'4". And then I think he might be 7'7" in his metal form. Don't quote me. I don't have this written down. I'm just going off my brain right now and what I remember. But yeah, that was cool. And I liked how there was that, I didn't forgive you. And then he shifts and he's like, but Illyana would have. Kind of cute. And I think the fact that Exodus reacted in the way he does means that Colossus would have said that Creed was innocent or, redeemable. I don't know if we would call the man innocent, but he had the potential to be redeemed, because I think he was considering what Illyana would have wanted in that moment. And it's a nice callback to earlier in the episode as well, when Nightcrawler is asking, is this what Illyana would have wanted? And Colossus basically says that it doesn't really matter what the dead want because they're dead. So they don't get to have a voice anymore, which is the tragedy of everything. But I do think it's important to consider the people that you're fighting for and why and what they would have wanted. Because if you're fighting in their name and you're not really representing them in the way that you would have known them in life, then what are we even doing here, right? I mean, then literally we're just fridging someone. So I like that Colossus decided, you know what, maybe we shouldn't just have Magik die just to advance my hatred of Graydon Creed. That would be nice. Exodus in this episode is also really cool to see. I love seeing him appear anywhere. I just think he's such a cool character, such a cool villain. He's extremely powerful. So it's cool to see people go up against him. And I like how he initially appears as kind of this level-headed look, like we're trying to build a new world. We're trying to hold people accountable. Is it really bad? Maybe he's got some points as the head of Magneto's Acolytes. And Nightcrawler just calls him out and is like, from the day that you were born, you're just a guy that's been looking for your 15 minutes of like faith fame. That's all this is for you. And you are not really what faith should be represented as. Basically, Exodus is more of a fanatic, He's using people's emotions to drive his own agenda, drive his own cause, and do his villainous stuff. And there's so many cameos in Magneto's Acolytes. Honestly, that could maybe even be its own video. We might need to talk about the Acolytes. And it's cool to see the Acolytes here because I even was talking about this in my Easter egg video when I was talking about Fabian Cortez. He does have a connection to the Acolytes in the comics. And while I didn't think we were going to see that here, we kind of did see that here in a different way, because this is Exodus with the Acolytes, not Fabian. Obviously, Fabian is gone, so that's that. But it was cool to see them appear and to see that one of my Easter eggs that I noticed actually did come into play. Wild. The fact that this sword fight that happens between Exodus and Nightcrawler is over Graydon Creed's soul, over his ability to potentially be redeemed, I also thought was really neat. I never thought that that's where that sword fight was going to happen. So that was a cool, fun little surprise for me. And I liked getting to see the X-Corp team go into action here. We do get some cool character moments, even outside of Nightcrawler. Bishop and Polaris have a little bit of a flirty thing, and I enjoyed that. When I was at San Diego Comic-Con, I actually met Polaris when I was at a party. Shoutouts to Carolina Ravassa, who I met at a party, and she was so cool. I even got a picture with her. Maybe we'll put that up here. I'll send the picture to my editor so we can have that. She was so cool, and she was saying, you know, if you liked the last episode for Polaris, because I was just like, you were amazing in the last episode. I loved it. And I was telling her I loved the previous episode. I loved everything she did with Polaris. And she said, well, wait till the next episode. And we did get a little bit more of Polaris. We get a little bit more of Bishop. So we're getting these cool character moments for other characters, which I like. But I do worry a little bit about the overall season in terms of how this affects our momentum for the main story. Because the one thing I am feeling a little bit with X-Men 97 season 2 is it too many cooks? Is it too many elements at play? Too many story things, too much going on in the world, too many characters? Because we do have Apocalypse. We do have Graydon Creed running for president now. That's what we're establishing here. We've got X-Force, we've got X-Factor, we've got now X-Corp coming in. We've got the power struggle between all these different teams. We've got potentially Kang could still come in and be our real villain at the end. I still think that's possible. So there's a lot going on and a lot of characters. And I know I was saying before that I was a little nervous about that, and I'm starting to get a little more nervous. I do think season 1 just felt like this was an opportunity for us to bring back a show we loved. We might only get one shot at this, so let's throw everything we have. So every episode, every moment felt very important, very impactful. And while I love this episode for Nightcrawler, and I know it is a character episode, not necessarily a main plot episode, I do worry that we just have kind of lost the main plot a little too much at this point, just because this episode is coming after a Wolverine episode, and then what I would say was predominantly a Polaris episode, also Danger, and we did still advance some stuff with the characters and the main plot in those episodes. This episode is also kind of doing that because we have Graydon Creed running for president, but it is primarily a Nightcrawler episode. But the good news is, at the end, seems like we're going to be getting back to some Apocalypse stuff. Maybe. I mean, Apocalypse is a skeleton. What's up with that? What I think may be happening here is Gambit may have become a new host for Apocalypse, and so Apocalypse is probably not gone. I definitely think I'm starting to get used to, maybe a little too much, the idea that X-Men is loving to kind of trick us into stuff. So they'll show you one thing, but then really something else is going on. You thought it was one way, but actually here's what really happened. So I think they're trying to psych us out by making us feel like, oh no, is Apocalypse dead? I don't think so. I think he's somewhere out there. Or perhaps he's taken a new form. Perhaps he's evolved. It is also possible that in some way he might be temporarily gone. Maybe Gambit did like drain him of his life energy when he came back. So we'll have to wait and see what's going on with that. But it could even be, if Gambit is the new host body, that Fabian Cortez being in Cable's dossier was a hint towards what was going to be happening here, which would be interesting because that is another connection to Fabian Cortez. A lot to think about, a lot to consider. What I will say is, overall, I still enjoyed this episode. I had a fun time with it. I just have a few notes, and I am a little bit concerned. I'm still loving season 2, but I don't know if I'm loving it as much as season 1. But that isn't to say that I'm not liking it. So, you know, I'm not saying that I hate it. I'm not saying that I'm over the moon in love with everything, but there's a lot to like, and there are some things I think to be critical about here. That's all I have for this one. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to watch my video. I appreciate you so much. Let me know your thoughts on this episode down in the comments below. Let's discuss, let's have fun, let's be respectful of each other. I'll see you down there, and until next time, friends, stay nerdy. Bye! And if you love hearing me talk about X-Men, I seriously love to do it. So you can check out more of that by clicking over here next.